a professional.
Yeah, I've done one before. Like I did that one for the Pickles Nichols show, or with the one with my regular show. Um, it just takes forever to do it, and I'm just
Right.
like so lazy.
Yeah.
It's funny, like now that I do this show on Wednesdays, and I do today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, to Wednesdays, Thursday. I'm actually throwing a Friday show, and then my regular Sunday show. Oh, and then I'm getting married this weekend too, so I got a lot of stuff going on this
Well, not
week.
only did you, yeah. Hello, everyone. By the way,
Yeah, yeah.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Not only did you not scale back leading into your wedding weekend, you added a show.
I added a show. Yeah, I was just so excited about talking about manga and the Japanese kind
So
of.
you and John are going to do the.
Me and Mr. Smith are gonna do something on Friday before I leave. I leave for my civil wedding which will be this Sunday. The actual Catholic um, religious wedding will be in the Philippines in 2 months, which is going to be very interesting, exciting, hot, long. um,
But
it's a
less expensive than you would think for what you're doing. Didn't you mention that one time?
Yeah, it's about 10 grand, 10 to 13 grand for 130 guests. We're having fireworks, full 3-course meal.
Are you
Um,
royalty in the Philippines or something? Like
no,
fireworks?
my dad's just really well connected. So kind of a funny story before we kind of get into the show. So we have like godparents, like they're called sponsors, Catholic or whatever. I don't know if you're Catholic, but they're supposed to be
Good old Southern Baptist here.
Southern Baptist. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So pretty close, right? So
yeah.
um so you have primary sponsors who are like they're supposed to be they kind of guide you through your marriage. So like if you need advice or like just someone to talk to, you're supposed to go to them to talk about whoever. It's more just like an ode to like the older generation. So one of the one one of the excuse me, one of our sponsors is an ex-congressman of the Philippines. He's my dad's best friend growing up. When they're growing up, they were altar boys for a church, and my dad wanted to come here, and this guy wanted to be in politics. So it's like having oh gosh, like name a congressman that you knew, like come being part of your wedding, and like he has to bring his own entourage with him, and it's this like whole production.
Tell me this. I'll know how big time you are. Is Manny going to be there?
We called Manny Pacquiao. He didn't pick up. He's probably, you're like everyone, whenever I say I'm going there or just that I'm Filipino, they're like, are you related to Manny Pacquiao? And I say, yeah, sure. Yeah. We're like long distance cousins. Yeah. He's definitely the pride of the Philippines. Obviously in his heyday, like, no one, I mean, you couldn't be, you'd be living under a rock if you know who Manny Pacquiao was, let alone the Philippines. But like when you enter the airport, there's a picture of him, like this huge mural. And as his popularity grew, there were more boxers, just photos of like the top boxer at that time in each division. And boxing, just like everyone wanted to become Manny Pacquiao. I mean, it's a phenomenon I don't think we'll ever see like in our lifetime in any country, let alone that be the Philippines, US, whomever. I mean, the whole nation had his back. Everyone knew who he was. And I don't think there's been I can't think of, unless like Tiger maybe, or like Jordan, of course, but like it's so much more an emotional thing because he literally came from like the streets of like the Philippines, not like America, but like the Philippines, where your chance is like 0.00001% versus like here's 1%. That it's a little bit better.
Right.
But he is very beloved there. But no, I do not. He's like it'd be like Seattle and LA. That's the distance, kind of like the region and stuff. But no,
But
unfortunately,
he
Manny
still
Pacquiao will
lives.
not be
He
there.
lives there. I mean, is
Yeah,
he living
I
there?
think I'm pretty sure he's like, I don't know if he's still involved in politics after his presidential run, but he still lives there. He's very active in the community. But he's not. I mean, like he doesn't box anymore, so it's like it's really. I think he's better off over here, honestly, versus over there as far as like making money and being famous. Because like
Yeah.
now he's like kind of like that face of boxing, um, retirees, like he was with Sugar Ray and those kind of guys. But I mean, great fighter, great boxer, great athlete, great inspiration to millions of people.
And all it takes is to be the champ once, to be the champ forever. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Probably people just want, how's it going, champ? Good to meet you. I mean, it's probably. I mean, they do that with Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas is greeted as champ.
Mm-hmm.
Even that most people would consider it a fluke, but it doesn't matter. All you had to do was do it once.
Yeah, and I think like what was lucky for Manny too was like he kind of caught the tail end of like the popularity of boxing. Like I feel, and I'm probably biased towards this, but like boxing isn't as popular a sport as it used to be. I mean, the fights you get now are like Jake Paul and like some streamer.
I don't even count that. They did have. I mean, there's a couple that are starting to like that. Mm-hmm. There was a fight this past weekend.
Oh yeah, Haney and Lomachenko. Yeah, that was a good one. I end up watching it, but it's like it's not like I don't know, man. Like it's not something I get excited for. Like even before Manny, I was a boxing fan. Like I watched De La Hoya, I watched Trinidad, so many other fights, but and I think it has to do with like the health of the fighters. Like they don't let them go all out like they used to, and fighters are much more passive, and I don't know. It's not as exciting as it used to be. The drama isn't really there, but
yeah. Probably a lot of this probably similar to like football or basketball. Look at basketball now.
Yeah.
Like the things they wonder are flagrant fouls. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I just watched again the documentary of the Celtics versus the Lakers, like their rivalry back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they beat the crap out of each other up and down the court. And it's like stuff knocking each other into the stands, and I mean stuff that you would get suspended for. They just broke them up and
kept playing.
Yeah. So it's crazy. They've kind of coddled.
Yeah, I mean it's sports in general, right? I miss it in basketball because I just miss those old what is it? Those old Pacers Knicks games were really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got 3 live in the chat right now. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday. I keep forgetting what day it is. It's 4:41 over here, 7:41 I'm assuming where you're at. How's the weather today?
Very nice. It was, I don't know, probably low 80s. Low 80s, sunny, shorts and flip-flop weather here in Columbia, South Carolina.
It's like 60. I think here, and I'm in.
Well, if you were cold when it was 70, then you're probably freezing at 60.
I'm in shorts, man. Like I'll take it. I'll take anything above 60.
Is it sunny? Is it sunny there?
Yeah, it's sunny. It's nice weather. It's a little windy. I think that's what always kind of messes us up. It's the wind, kind
of little wind chill.
Yeah, a little wind chill. I'm a little bit close to the water, the Puget Sound. So we're not on the ocean, but the sound kind of see orcas and stuff. I'm a little close to that, and it's a little bit lower level and stuff. But yeah, I on the updates I've been doing for on our Instagram and all that, a lot of debt ceiling stuff. That's kind of like the theme today is the debt ceiling. When I was a few years ago, I don't really remember the debt ceiling being issued until like 2011, and there was so much turmoil back then. And ever since then, it's always been an issue, the debt ceiling. It's always been like, the budget, obviously, like no one can budget on this upcoming thing. And it's used as like, political tool, quote unquote, or just, tool whatsoever to get agendas passed. And essentially, it's kind of how I look at it. But it's always funny how, like, especially with the spread of information nowadays, like how the debt ceiling, which we all are pretty confident that it's going to be figured out. I mean, I think they may kick the deadline down the road a little bit. They can make kind of adjustments and whatever. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, and so I'm not going to get into the amendment part of it, but there are adjustments. They can actually extend the debt ceiling to past June 1. But recently, and I think it's actually healthy for the market too, the S&P 500 has been around 4,100. And I want to say the Fed doesn't like that. I think the Fed's like, I want it more around 4K, and then I'll maybe stop raising rates. It seems like people are spending money. How's the real estate part in South Carolina treating you?
Yeah, it's doing well. I actually sent you. We were talking backstage, but I sent you a link to a listing that I just took, and it went live yesterday about 11 a.m. our time here on the East Coast, and I had 5 showings that day. So we had about half a day of showing potential time. We had like 5 or 6 showings, and I got 3 offers. So my folks accepted the offer, one of the offers today, and the other agent's ratifying the contract as we speak. So hopefully when I get done, I'll check my email and have a ratified contract, another one. So it's been good. It was encouraging to see people out looking and have people jumping in. We use an app to schedule our showings.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see the schedule and see, like, we had a pretty good stretch where people were taking little blocks of time, and for probably about 4 or 5 hours, it was booked yesterday afternoon. So it was encouraging to see, and the response was just almost people pleading to, ultimately I represent the seller, so I have to look out for the seller's best interest, but to have conversations with the agents and the feedback. If you've got for sellers, this is a nugget before we get to our nuggets, but if you've got a house to sell,
mm-hmm.
making sure you're offering a good product. One of the big things that I offer is to go in and walk around. And I'm not trying to get sellers to spend a ton of money to get the house ready to sell, but I do want to walk through and make some suggestions. And that seems to help a lot. And if you've got a good product, I had an agent call me and say, "Hey, I just wanted to give you some feedback. The house wasn't right for my buyer, but it showed great, and the photos, it reflected." There's old James Kreider. What's going on, man?
Yeah, sorry. The chat was disabled. I don't know why it saves this is for kids, but I apologize, guys. We do want interaction because we want to answer people's questions. And yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for coming in. Thank you, Wade. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Thank you. So it was. She said that the house showed great. It was really well decorated. It was clean. Mm-hmm. Something I take pride in, because a value added item for me as a real estate agent is I pay to have a professional photographer photograph my listings. So it does a couple of things. It ensures that we've got a good, photos are everything. You can write as eloquent as I think my descriptions of the house are. It's the photos that really sell. So, but it also shows the sellers that I've got skin in the game before the first person walks into, potential buyer walks in. I've got skin in the game. I pay for that out of my pocket. So, but this agent called and said, "Hey, it showed just as good as the photos," which is a bit of a compliment, because we're pretty good at, I've been in plenty of listings where it was like, God, this room looked bigger in the photos, but it was a good representation. So really good all around, listing experience. And we've had a good response and hopefully have it shut down. But I think a good future topic for me might be, one, how to preparing a house to sell, what some of the steps to do, but also on the other side, the buyer side is what can you do to win a bid? If you've got multiple offers like this was multiple offers, what can you do to stand out from the crowd? So we might do, and anything that you guys think of in the chat. Of course, we love your feedback. Let us know what you would like to, if we're not touching on something that you would like to know about, let us know. Leave us some feedback. Leave us a comment if you're watching this on the rewind. We value that. we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we had really good kind of back and forth with John Smith about he had some questions. He's very young. He lives in New York, and he wanted us to do kind of like a rent thing. And I messaged him and I was like, "Oh, I'm curious why you wanted to see like, rent type stuff." And he just for his own kind of sake of like, "Man, my rent's like going up $200 every year or 250." And I was like, "Man, why don't you think about just buying a house?" Like, I know, it's not something bad to look into and if it's like, oh man, I can't do it, cool, at least I feel like most of the time with anything, it's always nice to know whether or not you can, and I think we say that all the time. I say that to people all the time. It's always nice to know, oh shoot, I don't think I can do it now, but at least I know what it's gonna take. And I went through that process, and now my anxiety over like, oh shoot, I don't know if I could ever afford a home is like over. Wade had a question for you. What is the worst experience you've had with selling a house, Brad?
Oh man,
That's fun stuff.
Gosh, that is. I can tell you like a funny story, and this dealt with not me as the listing agent, but me as a representing a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And one Sunday afternoon, this little old lady had come into town, and her friends lived here, and she was looking to relocate and had a certain area in mind. And there was to call it a fixer upper, what is a bit of an overstatement. We walked in and it looked like somebody had been squatting in this house. Now the bones were great, but it looked like somebody had been squatting in this house. And we're walking around and I'm like, gosh, I cannot, like, I didn't want to breathe the air in this house because it was terrible. And we went into the master bedroom and she's standing there looking around and she's like, I see a lot of potential here. And I look down and I'm like, lady, there is human feces on the floor right in front of you. Like, what potential? Let's get out of here. Like, what potential could you possibly see? So, I mean, it's the beauty of what I do, and you may enjoy this too, Ferd, but I just like that every experience is different.
Yeah.
And 10 years in, like actually June will be 10 years since I've been in real estate. 10 years in, I don't like every transaction is different.
Sure.
And you get different people to work with, different personalities, and you have to kind of figure out how to communicate with those people so they understand what you're saying. And I'm not I would starve if I had to work on an assembly line where it was a mundane task, and I like that every experience is different. So yeah, we never, I'm sure that's certainly not the last, and I'm sure I've got a lot more. Wade, let me I'll share some more in future episodes, but yeah, you never know, man. You're just gonna it's always something.
Yeah. Me, I would say it's it's a little bit tougher. Brad probably has a lot more like interesting. There's never like a like lending sunset, it's always like, selling sunset, meaning like there's always people, you want to see the house. You don't want to see like the finance papers and all that. I would say it's more of the situations with people. I'll be real quick and then we'll get into like our show today. But I was working in special assets, which basically that means is I think it's always the background of the clients. Without getting into too much detail, this client was, or I would say this customer, I wouldn't say a client. They were living in this house that was worth about $3 million in 2011, at a view of the water. It was on the same island that Bill Gates and all those Microsoft guys live on. I think Bezos has a house out there now. It's called Mercer Island. And there was a person that was basically squatting in the house. It was like in foreclosure, and we couldn't get her out. This house was, I mean, the property itself was valued at $2.5 million, $2.5 to $3 million in 2011, right? So that's like the absolute bottom of the market. And there was 3 liens on the property, and we were, I think, second or third. I can't remember, but we were trying to force foreclosure, but she just would not move out of the house. And the thing is the water was cut off from this home and it was like October. And so she was living on one side of the house. And I don't know how she was surviving, because I don't know if you've been to Seattle in October, but it is wet, gross. It's nasty. There was no, the city cut off power to this house. There was no water running, but she just wouldn't leave. I don't know if she had in her head that she'd be able to hold on to it and sell it for like double the price, but I don't know. We had to get like sheriffs involved and all that. And, eventually she moved out. I think we took like a 50% haircut on the money we lent out to her. So that was kind of an interesting story of just trying to get her out in the background of it. If you're trying to foreclose on your own house or a deed in lieu in Hawaii, do it. It's really tough to get foreclosures through the Hawaii system. So banks are more, I probably shouldn't say this. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say this on live. Let's just say that lending and buying in Hawaii is a very fascinating transaction, acquiring homes in Hawaii. If you're trying to get a foreclosure, it's very hard. It could take years to do that. So just kind of think that on top of your, kind of where I'm going through it with that is, if people always ask me, oh, what's the foreclosure list look like? I'm like, don't look in Hawaii, because it's going to be there for 3 years. I don't know. It's just because of the judicial system there or just what, but yeah, Mercer is beautiful. I would never want to live there. It's just, you're just separate from everyone else. It was actually, Wade, I don't know if you know this area, but so it's like Mercer's like the city that all these people live on. It's an island, but Medina is like the 1% of Mercer. So it's like all these rich people live in Mercer, but the really rich, like generational, like money, lives in Medina. It's a very secluded area, very like 1%. I think it was at one time the most expensive zip code, like west of the Mississippi, even more than LA,
Wow.
because it's so confined and it's in such a weird area. Our taxes aren't very high here either. So I think that's why people live here, is because we don't have state income tax.
Okay.
So you just have federal tax. So whatever, rules, whatever. That's why companies like going here. And that's why I think people like living here too. But who lives there? Oh, like Jeff Bezos lives there. He's pretty rich. I'm pretty sure Elon Musk no, he probably doesn't have a home out there. Bill Gates still has a house out there. The late Paul Allen has had a house out there. Starbucks, Howard Schultz. I mean, they all live out there. I would never want to live out there. It's just far away from everything, that kind of thing.
Well, you just get a helicopter, You just take a helicopter everywhere.
Just get one of those artificial intelligence helicopters. You're good to go. But
there you go.
Yeah, a lot of baseball players live out there too. It's nice. It's east of Seattle. You're right in between Bellevue and Seattle, so I think that's why people like it. But anyway, we got some. I think we have a really nice presentation today. We were kind of going back and forth on this. What am I talking about? We weren't really going back and forth on this. We just had a lot to talk about. And Brad was like, we got a lot to talk about this week. And I think we say that, I mean, this is like our third show, right? So I think we always say that every week, but I think it just means that, there's more ideas that we want to talk about with you guys and present. So
sure.
You can see this okay, right?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So topics we're covering today, I wanted to get really into the debt ceiling and what happens if we go into default, and the likelihood, and what happens if we don't go in default. It's a lot of people are worried about like, oh shoot, what happens if we go in default? Well, you should also not worry, but wonder, hey, what happens if we don't go in default and everything kind of goes c'est la vie? Brad's going to kill the summer 2023 real estate market and kind of expectations here. I'll go third base with credit tip of the day, and then we'll end it with Brad's The More You Know. And that's kind of where we'll end the show today.
They're still letting us use that, huh?
What's that? Yeah, they're still letting us. I think it's not video, so I think that's why we're good.
All right.
So
good.
Yeah, no videos. So kind of the big elephant in the room that we've been talking about for, it seems like, a while. Eagles Nest, it might be. I don't know. And I'm sure you did, man. I know you're pretty handy with a lot of stuff, so that's pretty cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, someone else I knew that was famous lived there too. I think Eagles Nest is like it might be a different area. I'm not sure, but anyway. So what happens if we default? It's not a good thing. I think that every time Capitol Hill brings this up to snuff, it's both sides' fault. I don't think they should even really be talking to the public until they get something figured out. It's all just for show. It's agendas are going to be pushed one way or the other, but the likelihood of it happening is not really real. There'll definitely be a panic because I mean, right now, like if I'm talking that there's no way there's not going to be they're not going to come to a conclusion. I just don't believe it. But yeah, it would freak out everybody. We'd see chaos in the markets. I mean, it's essentially like being 30 days late on your mortgage. A lot of bad things happen. Your credit score goes down. Your interest rates go up. That's what's going to happen to bonds. Bonds are going to go up in interest rates and drop in value. Equities across the market could drop 25% just based on the leveraged amount that companies are at right now. The cost of trying to do business is really high. Job losses could also surmount 25%. I think, Brad, you're probably a lot better situation than me if we were to go into a debt ceiling. I think more importantly, though, Social Security won't get paid out. Medicare won't parts of Medicare won't get paid out. I'm being very, very general, not being very specific, but there's so many different like programs that are affected by our budget, obviously, because it's government, funded. I want to say 90% of Microsoft's revenue is through the government. So, I mean, that's a pretty big company there. And think of defense. Think of everyday workers. Think of like the people that water the plants for the city. They're all going to be affected by this, by a potential default. And Brad, how does it affect your side of like the economy, quote unquote?
I mean, just from the as we were leading up to this, I felt myself getting anxious talking about this conversation. Just that we all know that we've talked about it on our past episodes, but they're going to figure it out. It frustrates me that it frustrates me that they use this as a bargaining chip. That this is something that we're going to hold out until we get what we want, or you don't get everything you want, or whatever, and those two things could be, it's just frustrating to see it drag out, because I asked you as you were talking about this on and this will be until it's figured out. I mean, I guess we will touch on this every single week, because this is something that we've got, that's kind of what we are doing this for, is to talk about those topics that are affecting us. But I asked you, does it, we both know that it'll get figured out, but how does the market respond? And I think the market responds as if it doesn't know that we'll get it figured out. It feels like it's a bit of a roller coaster. Like with news, it kind of, just gets, I think it works on the stability of the foundation is just kind of, it feels weakened whenever they don't just, because the first week we talked about it, you mentioned, hey, positive news, the market's reactive positively today because it looks like they might get it done this weekend. And that was 2 weeks ago, and here we are. And then going into last week, you mentioned, and this is, if you're not watching Ferd's daily updates, they are incredible. But it's like going into last week, it's at a complete, both sides just walked away. So like, how do you, it's just all over the place, man. And it's so frustrating it would affect me, because that foundation being shaken makes everybody pump the brakes. It just makes everybody stop and, hey, I don't want to, I'm going to hold on to my cash and see what's going on. So that's frustrating for me, but I did feel myself getting a little nervous, a little, I don't know, anxious going into this, our third podcast, talking about this and kind of seeing what's happening.
Yeah, and James, he puts a really good point. Debt ceiling has been a remnant of a Congress giving power to, giving, or the Treasury giving Congress power to pay bills since World War One, I believe, World War Two. And it's like it's all politics, and I'm not playing one side or the other. I'm pretty moderate. I'll just say it out loud. It's both. It's a lot of pointing fingers and not enough thumbs. To kind of, yeah, I mean, it's the one thing I did see that was very concerning. I think you could take out anything out of this whole talk of debt ceiling. So the Dow was down, S&P 500, the Nasdaq is all down. Not after hours, but Nasdaq was down currently. Usually, when there's a panic and when stocks sell off, that money moves to another area. Fund managers have to move their money and park it somewhere, right? And typically they park it into bonds. Well, the 10-year bond actually went up today by 2 basis points. That doesn't sound like a lot in theory, but the Dow's down 250 to 300. That money usually moves to bonds, and that moves down interest rates, which makes me happy because I can lend at a lower rate. However, that didn't happen. I don't know, James, if you know. I'm glad that you came in the show today. James, does the debt ceiling affect your rates as lending on cars and whatnot? And that's a good point too. Quarterly taxes coming due on 6/15 could let pressure out the rest of the summer. And so I think there's not a huge panic that this debt ceiling talk is going on. But today, I mean, yeah, again, we're down 280, and it's like if people weren't really too crazy about the debt ceiling or not too worried about it, you wouldn't see a 280 drop in markets. So I don't know if I was just reading the headlines and not really digging into it deeper, but I didn't see a lot of confidence in any type of market, honestly. Maybe fund managers are just parking money into cash and putting it in money markets. Who knows? But it's definitely not going from the usual equities into bonds, which usually is what occurs.
My my fear, and it's the reason we started this in the first place, was you and I were convinced that this what we're going through was not 2008 all over again because we had proof. But to the average person, when they see this stuff, it ramps up the fear, and so they're reacting based on just what they hear instead of really digging deep and understanding that, look, it's going to get taken care of. But I just think that's, well, it's, like I said, that's the whole reason we started this, was to provide a little more in-depth information on these shock headlines that we see so often.
Sure. No, definitely. And I hope we're doing that for everybody too. I feel that we are. So what happens if there's no debt ceiling issue? Everything's okay. My worry actually is for the Fed and for banks in general. And okay, that's good to know, James. Banks haven't done anything crazy, but they're definitely tense and tightening on credit lending. I would say my bank is actually tightening a little bit. I think we're just being conservative because of the cost to loan out money. We want those reserves just in case, or maybe on to hold off until the market cools a little more. We've taken out some programs on our portfolio lending, and it's been frustrating to some loan officers here. But at the same time, is it healthy? I think it's healthy. It's not a sign of panic. I mean, like we're going to talk a little bit. Supply and demand is still there. It's just more of like, gosh, we still don't know. Where there's anticipation of a recession for fourth quarter. And so with that kind of idea and interest rates so really high, banks are starting to tighten a little more. And I think even with a debt ceiling being figured out, I think the Fed is still going to reassess what's going on in the overall equities market. I mean, you just said today, you listed a house and for less than a week and it's gone. So that's not a healthy market in regards to like supply. You need that 3 to 4 month kind of supply, like you're saying. And it just seems like we're never going to get there. The Fed, I was reading something the other day that the housing market is starting to strengthen again, and that's bad news for the Fed. He's like, my tightening didn't work. We're not dissuading people from trying to buy a house. And I think also cash is truly keen right now. It's specifically the US dollar, the greenback. I think just like the company I work for, and I think for just tech companies especially, they're not gonna spend. They're gonna be like, okay, now that we have this debt ceiling thing kind of over with, we can kind of go towards status quo. But like, I'm not growing my company. It's too expensive to grow. It's too expensive to hire more people. It's I gotta borrow interest rates at 3 times higher than I did a year ago. I gotta cool off just in case something happens. I think also, and NVIDIA, it's kind of serendipitous that we're talking about NVIDIA today, but NVIDIA, I'll try and summarize a little bit quicker so people aren't bored, but NVIDIA was one of the biggest, I would say, underlying companies from the pandemic. NVIDIA makes processors for your computers, and they make like the #1 processing chip for video games, for Bitcoin miners, for all that. And so during the pandemic, people were mining Bitcoin at crazy numbers, and NVIDIA chips were they're like the Cadillac or the Mercedes of processors. So if you had an NVIDIA chip, you could mine a lot quicker, any type of crypto, the guy next to you. Well, the thing with NVIDIA is they have like a pipeline. Kind of think of them as like a pharmaceutical company. They have a pipeline of chips 5 years ahead of everyone else. And so when AMD comes out with their chip, that's like, oh, we're in line with NVIDIA. NVIDIA says like, well, guess what? We have one that's like 3 times faster than yours. It can process at a cooler rate. And now with AI kind of being the forefront, NVIDIA, with the economy in a recession right now, quote unquote, NVIDIA bumped 75 points today. It's at a 52-week high. I mean, AI, we've talked about that on the OTR podcast. I haven't talked about it a little bit on my show on Sundays, but it's that sector of AI is still moving at a rapid pace. And I think if you're thinking about kind of the future of a business and the future of tech and the future of where to actually look and put your money, maybe it's not investing in crypto. Maybe it's investing in the companies that create the crypto, or maybe it's not investing in AI, but maybe the companies that produce the AI. That's why I highlight NVIDIA here. It doesn't really have to do with what's happening with the Fed, but just kind of something to be on the lookout for. And I'll probably continue to do that going forward. I just think it's nice to not necessarily recommend to buy the stock at what it is today, but definitely like, okay, this is like I said, the Cadillac of semiconductors, but what else to kind of look out for in that sector and why it's at a 52-week high is kind of where I'm at. And I don't know, Brad, are you familiar with NVIDIA at all? Or I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a pretty big company.
Yeah, I've heard of it, and I mentioned to you backstage. I just saw this pop up. I perked up when it was mentioned in association with the AI stuff, because that's been because on the radar, you guys have been talking about that stuff a good bit, and it's all over the place. I mean, it's come up in I guess it first cropped its head in our other hobby. The way we met was comics and AI's involvement in comic book production. So yeah, I just heard it in association with AI, and that was a couple of days ago. And then I saw this slide, and I'm like, all right, there's something happening. And then of course you posted a nice update today, illustrating the bump they got today.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because now I look like, oh, I just saw it. I got to put it on my slides. I had this done on Monday. So I'm kind of like hitting myself like, and literally, I think when you're all like, I want to kind of highlight in my videos going forward, or our videos going forward, is like things to look out for. Like, why did I think of NVIDIA? I didn't look at any sheets. I didn't look at any, like, I don't know, any insider information. I met a guy that worked there and he talked about his company and all that stuff. I don't really have any insider info. I didn't really analyze any, like, balance sheets or like income statements. I literally just use common sense. And it's like, it's obvious that AI is this growing part. It's in the news. It's on Twitter. It's on all the talking heads in tech want to get into it. I think the metaverse is still like in its infancy, in that I feel like that was kind of like the hot topic. Now AI's just like trumped it. You know, it's definitely stepped over the metaverse type stuff. But
Yeah, it
and
seems like
I'm not saying go buy 100 shares of this, but definitely look at like what's Nvidia doing, what companies are they partnering with, and like, oh, maybe they're partnering up with that small company that I know because of my friend that works there. They can buy like 20 shares of that company. That's kind of where you should look at it if you're thinking about investing in.
yeah. And you saying that made me think about. I think it might have been on the Radar podcast where they were talking about, if you're mining for gold, somebody makes the pick, somebody makes the pan, somebody, it's all that other stuff that goes into it. Thinking about those connectors and those associations, and maybe there's a move you could make. I like that idea. I really like that.
Cool. And if anyone has any questions, like in the chat, like I love comic books, but I live and die with equities and talking about companies. Like I love this stuff. And I think it's kind of when the love of the comic book market, it really like hit me too. So anyway, oops. Hold on
it's probably the same type of research. You're just applying it to a different thing.
Yep.
I mean, you really
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Brad, do you have any questions? I mean, like, I know we're hosting together, but I always like to have questions for you. And I don't know if did you have any curiosities about any of the stocks I talk about?
I prepare for this by watching your daily stuff. I mean, I just assume that we're going to be touching on a lot of the stuff that your shorts that you post. I mean, you're all this stuff. You're doing a great job of dumbing it down for somebody with my level of experience for it. So I think you're doing a great job explaining all this stuff.
Okay, cool. Because if it doesn't, let me know. I kind of go on tangents and just like whatever. So
this is our third one, and you've done a great job up to this point. So,
and the chat's been really helpful too. I don't know much about lithium mining companies. My experience with mining companies has always been just weird stuff. I don't know. I haven't done very well. I guess just say that, but it was very small, right? But no, I didn't know that. That's something else to look out for too. And anyway, yeah. So no, good stuff. Summer 2023. So this is West Coast kind of stuff I found. All that stuff. We're still going to have problems with the inventory. It's just not going away. I was talking with a client, and James, I'm really curious, James. We might have to have you on if you feel comfortable coming on live, because I'm very curious about. So Brad and I, we work in real estate, right? Obviously, and that, but it seems like cars and the automobile market is just like crazy, not making sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So maybe we can get with you sometime and just like have you come on and just explain like what you do. I'd really appreciate it. But as far as the West Coast is concerned, it's the inventory is just the inventory problem is just getting worse. What I hear is like builders just can't build fast enough, whether it be permits or land or margins, employment, not to get in political stuff, but like, immigrants that do labor for less money, there's just not as many of them, or they're charging more. So again, it's a margin thing, right? And a lot of people are just, they get like Brad and I were talking about this earlier, like they get so married to the rate, and that doesn't really mean anything until you get that house. I remember I had friends going around, this is before I was into lending, and they'd be like, oh man, I got pre-approved at like 4.5% or whatever, right? And I'm like, well, you found a house yet? And they're like, oh no, I've been looking for a year. I'm like, well, then you're not really pre-approved at 4.5%. You just have a floating rate until you find a house. But like until then, like doesn't really matter.
Yeah, had you bought one then, you would have, but you didn't.
Exactly.
So now it's it's 6.5 or whatever.
It's just such a funny thing to brag about, right? And the normal kind of process is when rates go up, house prices go down, or equities or assets go down, right? That's usually what happens, right? Well, like Brad and myself and probably James in the chat, that hasn't happened. Rates have done this, and it's not like assets are doing this, but they're kind of going steady with the interest rates. And, until supply demand, kind of does a different move, and more importantly, I think employment, it's not going to stop. I think employment's having a really like tough effect on inflation. And it sounds really bad. I don't want anyone to lose their job, especially like you or I. But the data's there. I mean, people are still hungry to buy a house. And I think if you're in the market to buy a home, if you don't feel comfortable with the monthly payment, don't do it. Like if you're like, man, I don't think I can afford $4,000 a month. I just can't do it. I'm okay with renting at 2,200 or 2,800. But when it hits that sweet spot of 3,500, whether I have to reduce the purchase price or wait for interest rates to go down, I just don't feel comfortable with that extra $500. That's cool. If you're okay with the monthly payment, but you just are so married to getting that 6.5%, 7% less of a rate or whatever, don't do that. Because the second that rates come down and you see, oh, it's at 6%, 5.75. Guess what? That house you're looking at that was at 500,000, it just shot up to 575 because of full percent reduction in rate. I mean, at least that's kind of what I see it happening here. And I'm not trying to do like a panic buy kind of thing or convince people to, panic buy. But if you have a pretty low debt to income at like 38%, 35%, and you're still concerned about the rate, it's kind of a bad move in this market today as of June 2023.
Yeah,
because
you could just, I'm sorry, go ahead. And
no, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you could chase that rate forever and stay right where you are. I mean, if that's the thing that's important to you, you could chase it for the rest of your life and rent and pay somebody else's mortgage, or whatever, and it's just, so when you were talking about this, do you have adequate housing for the price that you can rent something for? Like at the same price, is there a decent house that you could buy for that same? If it's 2,500 in rent, is there a decent house for that price?
So the clients that, or the kind of the client I'm referring to, it's like they're trying to move out of the city, right? And so when you move out of the city, especially here, it's less expensive, right? They live in an apartment at $2,500 a month. So they're pre-approved at like 32, 33, but the rate's too high, quote unquote. They're only putting 5% down. So it's not like they're going to be, house rich, cash poor. They still have they're very well rounded as far financially. But they're just married to that rate for whatever reason. And it's like, okay, you want to be in a 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath in Seattle, and you're kind of like, you want to live like 30 minutes out of the city, yet, that 6.5% rate is just not, or 6.625 rate's not doing it for you. Like, I think that's a point where you really have to explain to someone, like, it's just not, you're going to be waiting a very long time. And why not get into that house if you're really got to have a stable job, good debt to income? Why not get into that house and
it's yours,
and then refinance it like 2 years down the road? Or, I mean, it's just the only thing I would say is that seems deterrent from buying a house right now is like the fear of a recession in third, fourth quarter. Would you say though, Brad? I mean, you've been doing real estate for 10 years. I've been doing lending for like probably around the same amount of time. I feel like this generation of like the Gen Z millennial, like younger millennial, like 32, they've seen the effects of a recession, and they've seen the effects of what a complete collapse of the economy can do to families. Do you feel that that younger generations are more apt to be financially responsible? Because I feel like they are.
I do, and I didn't have a lot of high hopes for that. But they're more responsible sooner than my generation was, I think,
Mhm.
just generally.
Mhm.
A lot of my oldest nephew is in his late 20s. He's married, got 2 kids. I helped them buy their house. Um, their house is ridiculous too. I helped them buy it 3 years ago
Mhm.
for 190,000, and it's probably worth over 300,000 now. It's crazy, but
Mhm.
just like making those decisions, they didn't get married and rent for a while. They went ahead and bought a house, and I said, "Hey, you could, you know, incrementally move up. Maybe don't buy your third house first or your second house first, but
Mhm.
buy something small and then we'll sell that move." And they said, "No, if we find the right thing, we won't want to leave." They were just that adamant about it.
Yeah.
And that's commendable, I mean, to have
Yeah.
that mindset. Friday, I've got an appointment with same age range. This guy does very well. And he's been wanting to. It used to be my next door neighbor, and they moved back where in the upstate where they're from, but he still wants to invest down here.
Mhm.
So we're going out on Friday, and again, he's in his late 20s, and he's thinking, if the economy, if something happens or my job is uncertain, he said, "I want to start buying rental properties there and just start amassing things so I've got some income, some passive income that I can start kind of squirreling away and have in case something happens." So I was like, that's kind of yeah, way we might do like a that might be. I actually mentioned backstage that we might get to a point where um I think it depends on what you want to use it for. Is it a second home like a vacation home, or is it a second home as in you want to uh, start your rental empire, or are you ready to move up to your second home? Give me a little detail there, and I think we can steer you in the right direction. Steer you in the right direction there. But I just think that's commendable to
Mhm.
have that mindset of
I'm
that's
tired of my kid.
yeah, yeah, we appreciate the
Right
honesty, man.
now is a good time to wait.
Yeah, go
You
for it, brother.
you know what people were doing during a pandemic and kind of after, even to like this day. I have a lot of clients sitting on a ton of equity, and that's another big thing with the housing market is people don't want to leave their current home because they have so much equity, and their thought process is like, I don't want to buy a new house because I don't want that monthly payment. So they're in like a very controlled type of like situation. Um, and I sent out flyers to people like, why don't you just tap in your equity, and when you're ready, you can buy it outright. Same as cash. You qualify for it, your debt to income is very low. You don't have to use it. It's a free loan. It's called a home equity line of credit. And you can basically use it as kind of I don't like to say this, but like a free check, basically. And I've had a lot of successful clients go in and buy properties in vacation areas or just areas that a second home would be wanted, right? And because of the ability to have, you know, to tap into their equity and buy a second home, whether it be investment or a vacation, it it was a good financing opportunity for them to do it. The typical way is to put like 20 to 25% down, and then your rate's going to be a little bit higher because it's a second home. You don't live there all the time. Um, I think when buying an investment home, not necessarily a second home, you really got to think of like the actuality of like getting the money. Like, are you going to go through a third party to handle rentals and like, you know, fixing the toilet and all that stuff, or like, dealing with money and all that stuff. If you're willing to if you can do the numbers correctly and get a good rental amount for it, it might be the good way to do it. If you're handy and you like kind of fixing up stuff, you may want to just do it all yourself. But again, you may get a call at 2 in the morning. Oh shoot, the basement flooded. I need you over here now. And if you're not within an adequate, distance from that rental property, it might not be a good idea. The other thing
So
too is go ahead.
I was going to say my response to that would be, it is so it's worth every bit of money to have a property management company handle it.
Yeah.
So if your rent is $1,500 a month, you pay them 10% of the rent each month to get those phone calls, to collect the rent, to screen tenants and handle all that stuff. It's worth it not to. And I also think it takes you personally out of it, where emotion might come into play.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of separates you from that. So you just take a percentage and put back, all right, I'm going to save X amount for incidentals each month, and build it up and do it that way. But I would highly recommend, because the guy that I'm going to hang out or going to show houses to on Friday, he doesn't live here anymore. So I'm going to set him up with a property management company.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just going to let them handle their thing and communicate with them. And I think if you have the right company that communicates the way you'd like to receive information,
Mm-hmm.
that's but it would be worth $150 a month to have somebody else deal with the headaches.
And I think to piggyback on that as well, when is a good idea to buy a second house? Ask your lender. Ask them what kind of products they can qualify you on, first off, because you may think you're ready to do it, but if you don't qualify, it's not. I mean, there's no question about it. So like, just forget it.
Find your FERD there in Oklahoma.
Yeah, find a FERD in Oklahoma. There's probably not that many Filipinos in Oklahoma, but and I can walk you through it too. I mean, I don't lend in Oklahoma, but Wade, I've advised people, or just try to help them out, what to look out for in other states that I don't lend to, and I'm more than happy to do that, man. As a friend of the podcast and a friend of the community, I mean, I'd rather you go in kind of with some confidence in your pocket, versus just going in there like, oh, I want to buy a second house, I don't know what to do, and like being taken advantage of. Like, anyone, I know we only got 3 live right now, but like anybody, like, do not hesitate. Either myself or Brad, I could say that out loud, but we're more than happy to help. So Brad, I found these numbers, and I just thought it was kind of interesting to look at because of the fact of the supply and demand. So do you want to go through them real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty close actually. Mm-hmm. The average, which is, it's crazy to me, because when I started 10 years ago, I think it was around 190,000 was the average home value, the average home price. So around 280. Yeah, I've seen anywhere from like 270 to 285, somewhere in that range. I saw that number recently. 743,000 population and 1,500 homes. I think I checked today, it was around 1,600. And I was telling one of the agents who showed the listing that went live yesterday, that's under contract. I told her, I said, it's not that listings are increasing. They are going up. Year over year, they're going up. But quality listings, there's a shortage of quality listings. You can't put, a Band-Aid on something and expect to get top dollar for it. And I think that's where a lot of sellers are falling short. Is I had a listing in a neighborhood. I priced it where I saw the closed sales fall, and there was the exact same floor plan was about 20,000 higher than what I listed mine for, and it's still on the market. We were under contract in 2 days. So, if anyone is wondering, well, did I leave money on the table? I think the market says no. The market says no. I priced it right, and they priced it wrong. They're still on the market. So it's it's important so quality listings, you can't get top dollar for. Quality is just like, it needs to look good. It can be quality doesn't mean new. The house I listed yesterday was built in 1980, and but I did that pre-walkthrough I mentioned earlier, and gave them suggestions on what I thought they should do to make it more appealing. I saved them. They were going to, there was, uh, it's an area that has a lot of trees. So they've got some buckling in their driveway. And they had actually gotten a quote for $5,000 to redo the driveway and fix that. And I said, no, keep it in your pocket. You know, out of the 6 showings we had yesterday, you know how many people mentioned the driveway? 0.
I was gonna say 0.
Yeah, nobody cared. It wasn't an issue. So I said, I'd rather you keep that 5,000 in your pocket. So that's it's not no work needed. But you've really minimized. I mean, it's just making it a showpiece, you know, having and there's cheap ways to do it. Paint goes a long way, man.
Sure does. Who likes to paint? No one likes to paint.
No one likes to, but everybody appreciates it when they walk into a freshly painted house.
And it's like, if it's all white, I think that's okay too.
Sure.
It's almost like a blank canvas in a way, right? You know?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. They've been trying to get away from that agreeable gray, but it's still like the hot, it's like a Sherwin-Williams is their agreeable gray is their it's still their hot color. It's like a grayish or a neutral that has, in certain light it looks beige and in certain light it looks gray, and people still really like that or really light gray. But yeah, that's it goes a long way. And it's stuff like that. It's not a perfect house. A quality listing is not a perfect house.
Gotcha.
It's just one that you want it to be a showpiece. You want to walk in regardless of the age and them see like, this is a model home. You know, I like the way they decorated. It's just being intentional about, we want to knock people's socks off when they walk in the front door and have them call and say, hey, I'm heading back to my computer right now so I can write, you know, I'm sending you an offer. I just want to call and let you know.
Wade says, do you have a lot of those black houses in SC completely black?
I do. No, we don't have any completely black houses.
So
we get a lot. We do a lot of one-story brick, like or little. There's a couple of really desirable areas that have these really nice little brick bungalows that were built in the 50s, and those do really well when they're updated. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, like a nice updated, fresh, but far from perfect. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps, Wade, with hopefully I answered your question there.
So I wanted to kind of hunker down the supply and demand stuff. I would say if you own your home right now, like, you're in a really good place. Like, obviously you can afford the payments, you're probably employed, hopefully. And you're probably not having to deal with having the stress of trying to buy a house. I didn't see how many actual homeowners were in these numbers, but population is pretty big, 743,000, and there's only 1,500 homes for sale. So just think about that. Think about, like, okay, the city is growing, and this is in Columbia. This is what I found. So I'm not sure if it's totally accurate, but that's a big population of people, and 1,500 homes for sale with that many people just does not seem like enough. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're feeling the effects right now for sure.
And I just don't see that. I don't see that number going up higher in the near term. The only thing I see occurring is the change in interest rates one way or the other. Now, if 30-year mortgages go to 8%, you're probably going to see a slowdown in buyers. It's just unaffordable at that point. But we're just not. We're still seeing rates at an affordable amount where it keeps the demand pretty healthy. And yeah, I don't know. It's I just thought that was a fascinating statistic to look at when you're thinking of, oh, I'm just going to wait till demand kind of falters. It just hasn't. Demand is not decreasing to a point where it's going to be more affordable for a home at these rates. So
it's a little scary in that, you know, in our previous show, we talked about the businesses that are moving here and the 4,000 jobs created for the Scout electric vehicles. And all right, well, where are those people going to live?
Exactly.
Like you just can't. I've got some folks who are building a house, and their house won't be ready until August, and they're already done with phase 1 of the neighborhood, and they don't even have approval within their own company to start phase 2 yet. So there's something. It's not just government. I think something internally with the way that process is run has got to happen. But we can't put. I think builders are the ones that are going to dig us out of this. But you mentioned something previously that I thought was really interesting that I had not thought about, and that was the fact that, hey, maybe instead of rentals, we need to get some of these people to give up some of those.
Yeah, that's gonna take a lot of money to get some lawyers to kind of fight that battle, or incentivize people to, like, I don't know if this is even feasible, but just a thought, like, hey, if you own a second home, and you either we force you to only limit to like 4, for example, or 5, um, the government, or I don't know, someone can offer 25% above market value to allow you to list your home. Like, so if your home sells for 500,000, the government or the county or whomever will give you an extra like incentive or tax, I don't know, something to incentivize you to get rid of the home. 25% is a lot, but like I just thought of that. There's you
Well,
can there's
you mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, and that's actually I shared the link with you on Instagram about that the CNBC
Mhm.
article.
Yeah.
So Lawrence Yun, who's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, I watched the video after I sent you that, and I shared it in the private chat. I don't know if maybe if anybody wants to check that out, if you could maybe post that so they could check it out later or something, that would be cool. But he mentioned the exact same thing you did 2 weeks ago. So you've got the golden touch with with this information. But I just really thought it was an interesting. You have to watch it to get the gist of it. But he's got a really interesting perspective. And if anybody wanted to check that out at a later date, it would. It's really interesting. But he mentioned the exact same thing you did. Now the thing
Wow.
that troubles me here is, so you're the chief economist for Sunset South. So, but the thing that worries me here is our rental market is pretty heavy too. So you might be affecting that segment of the population who can't afford to buy a home, who needs that rental market. So
Yeah.
that's the only
Yeah.
thing there that may affect us a little differently than it might in Seattle.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because the people here, they're like, God, my rent's going up again. And I have this anxiety of like, I'm like, why don't you just buy a house? Oh, rates are too high. I'm like, okay, but you just said that you're worried about your rent going up $200, and this house is worth, your rent's 2,400. So possibly in 3 years, you're gonna be the same amount of this house, but that house is gonna be worth 3,500 a month. So it's like you're just chasing, right? As opposed to being like, whatever. Um, anyway, it's a then I think of like people I know, and I think of like people I know on both sides that rent and are landlords. I'm like, you're a horrible landlord, and I feel bad for you because you feel this like emotion that you cannot like take care of a home or afford one, and it's just not. I just don't think it's like a feasible thing. Um.
It's
Anyway.
not, but it's just going to take people like us kind of chipping away at those myths, and
Mhm.
maybe we do like a myth episode
That'd be
where
fun. I
we,
think it'd be really cool. Just go
yeah,
back and forth. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. My credit tip of the day, I always like to quote like a famous like philosopher or leader. There is nothing impossible to him who will try. And this is from Alexander the Great. And this hit me in a way with my clients. And a lot of times I'll get a call, and a phone call is different from an email. The email is so just like blah 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 blah, blah done. But a phone call is like, I really want to know. I really want to get information. I have this more emotional kind of drive to get answers, right? So I got a call from someone today, and it went for about like 15 to 20 minutes, and they're like, my credit's really bad. I only have this much to put down on a home, do you think I would qualify? And I go, you probably wouldn't today. But this is what it would take to get you to at least having it be a sniff of an idea. Do you want to at least work on your credit to kind of get up to 620? That way it'll open up more opportunities for you. And they said, oh, maybe I'll try again, but I appreciate your time. And again, it was like a 20-minute conversation, but as even though it didn't end up being an application or a sale, whatever you want to call it, at least I can say to that person, like, I answered a question for them that they didn't feel like shame of asking, or they at least tried. And I wasn't like, no, what are you thinking? Like 480 credit score? Like you're never going to be able to buy a house. I think when people take like the effort to make a phone call and to actually ask a difficult question they probably don't want to hear the answer of, and they get kind of a different answer, it's a more satisfying phone call. Even though they didn't get the result that they were hoping for, at least they kind of know. And that's kind of my whole basis for like this channel, and for what questions I ask you or what questions you ask me, is like, it sounds really corny, but like there's no such thing as a bad question, because I don't know what people's thought processes either, unless they ask those questions. And I guess it's also our job too to like be able to know what questions that people are going to ask, or alleviate those kind of like, whatever. I always laugh at people saying like, oh, you probably say this to people all the time. And my rebuttal to that is always like, yeah, but I don't coach soccer either. So if I were to ask you how to kick a goal, you probably know how to do it like the back of your hand, but like it would take me 20 minutes to understand on how to do that. That's why I got to make it like an easier presentation for somebody, that kind of thing.
Well, so they saw that you cared, like so you made them feel comfortable. Now the question is, how do you get them to the point of like, to where it's you can't now, but you can. If you do what I'm suggesting, we will get you there. We'll be sitting at the closing table.
Yeah.
We'll be high-fiving, and we'll be, you'll have those keys slid across the table to you. And
that's great feeling.
Right? Yes, it is. I love it, man. That's one of the reasons I do this. And I know that's you're passionate about that stuff as well.
Yeah, and the trust thing, man. It's like, and everything's just not like, it's not so black and white. There's actual like things you can work out to financing a home and all that stuff. But my credit tip of the day is, if you're not confident about your credit, or you just don't have any established, open a secured card. Basically what you do is you put down like $500 at like, name a national bank, or just type in secured card. You put $500 down as a deposit, or $200 is very minimal. And essentially that's your credit limit. So let's say you have one for 200 or whatever, and you use that to like pay for gas every month. Well, just pay it back every month. And the credit card or the bank is okay with giving you a secured card, because if you don't pay your loan that month, they just take the money from the deposit you put in. Well, if you pay it off every month, the credit bureaus will see that you're making good payments every month. Credit history is always good. And you're protected, because you're never going to go over that amount, or you're never going to be late, because again, they'll just take the money off of it. That's really a good way for either younger people that maybe like you're an immigrant and you haven't lived here for a long time, and you just don't have the credit history.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Or just someone that doesn't have good credit and they want to reestablish that. It can be kind of expensive if you don't have the $200 or $300 to kind of like put away. It's sometimes a lot of money to people if they don't have great credit. But if you really, really want to improve your credit, and it's really hard for you to open up a credit card, there's no better way than to open a secured card. Make sure there's no annual fee there. Make sure there's no fees at all for using it. Just kind of read the fine print. It takes like 5 minutes to go through it. Again, if you want to put the effort into it, there's always a way to get out of a rut. Even people with bankruptcy. Well, we may talk about that one time, but I don't want to get into it right now. So, anyway, when you get clients, Brad, what do they ever ask you questions about, like their credit or financing, or do you just kind of leave that up to whomever?
I do get that sometimes, and I'll mention, yeah, there you go. I just say that's probably I would say that's probably a Ferd question, or my Ferd here. That's probably a lender question. I don't want to misguide you, so I'll defer that stuff to the lender to make sure, because there's in my experience there's probably not one answer. There's probably several. There's not one right answer. There's probably several ways to get to the end result.
Yeah. All right, Brad.
So,
Well, more than the more you know.
yeah, I just thought this was interesting. We were in the news recently, and I've got a link in the private chat that I'll just. So South Carolina has 5 of the best places to live. All right, 5 of the best places to live. It was on the list at U.S. News and World Report. So interestingly enough, Myrtle Beach was number 1, which is like a super touristy area. If can you go back to pull up that slide?
Oh, sure. Hold on. Yeah, hold on 1 second. Oh, okay.
Making you dance around.
No, it's all good.
Check the maybe it's the next slide. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to give some context here so people could see. So Myrtle Beach was number 1. So just so you have an idea of where everything is located. I'm in the Columbia area, right in the center. Greenville and Spartanburg were on the list. They're northwest of in the what we call the upstate area. So Greenville, Spartanburg, Columbia. You can see Myrtle Beach was on it. Augusta is where, of course, the Masters is played. That's relatively close to Columbia. And but this just gives you some context if you're not familiar where these places are located. But notoriously, Myrtle Beach. Can you pull up that that link again? Historically, Myrtle Beach is a very touristy place. In fact, one of the things I noticed is that you ever go to the beach and you want some good local seafood and just kind of experience that. We'll go, and there's an area in Myrtle Beach. We'll go to like some of the outer lying beaches, not like right in Myrtle Beach proper. And you ride by and it never fails. Red Lobster's parking lot is packed in Myrtle Beach. It's like people want what's familiar, and they eat Red Lobster at home and they have one here. So it's just familiar to them. But I want the local stuff, man. I want the local flavor.
Yeah. Give me that.
Yeah. So now that you have some context, this will make a little more sense. Greenville, Spartanburg is about 30-ish minutes from the Greenville area. Greenville's had a lot of growth, and it's one of the areas in the state that's done really well. And like I said, Spartanburg is just on the outskirts of that. If you scroll down, Charleston, of course, we've talked about Charleston before. You've got family who've spent time there. It's a very historic area. And then, of course, Columbia is there on the list too. So I just thought it was cool to be, we've had a couple of every one of our podcasts that we've done, we've had some really positive information about the state here. Last week it was that Columbia was on the list, and so was Seattle on that top 15 or top 20.
Well, I just think the potential of South Carolina. I mean, I didn't even realize you guys were attached to Georgia. That's my just no knowledge of the area. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a Tar Heel. And so I remember applying to UNC when I was like 16 or 17 or whatever. And I mean, I didn't get in, but I didn't, I would always think, I didn't even think of South Carolina back then, really, but the fact now that it makes sense because you guys are next to Georgia, which is, from some people I hear, New York South. That's what they call Atlanta, at least. Very big, obviously. I mean, the Olympics were there in '96. And so, I mean, you guys are right next to, you border a major state. It's on the ocean. And I don't think a lot of people know that either. because I have family here. They're like, South Carolina, isn't that like near Florida? Like we have no idea, that kind of thing.
So you're not just going to get, the money and the real estate stuff here. We're also going to do a little geography lesson.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize you guys are right next to Augusta. I mean, Savannah is beautiful. Athens, is that where? What's in Athens? Is that
UGA?
UGA? Okay, so like
Bulldogs.
I'm sure. So just from like a growth
Charlotte.
standpoint,
I mean, Charlotte, just
Charlotte's
north of
right
Rockville.
there.
So you got I-95, which runs up and down the East Coast, runs right through. And of course 77 goes straight up into Charlotte. So it's really, there is really a lot of potential. And I've mentioned on a previous, it was the first podcast where we were talking about the electric cars and the battery stuff that's going on here in the future, and that Charleston was the number 8 port in the United States.
It's
so
weird.
you see with all the interstates and stuff, how the transit can really originate there and it just kind of branches out.
I mean, I'm surprised you guys have had pretty amazing growth year over year, real estate wise, but like, I feel like it's almost like just from the geographical standpoint, throw all the other stuff out the window. I mean, you're so close to like so many attractions. It's advantageous for anyone that's living in South Carolina that maybe doesn't want to live in Atlanta because the traffic sucks, or Charlotte's too big for them, or like wants to be close to U of A but doesn't necessarily want to be like in Athens, going to college, or like in the college town, but they want to live in South Carolina. There's a lot of really great, geography. Being in Washington, it's like you either have Canada or Portland. It's really like the closest like driving points. That's what kind of sucks about Seattle. But at the same time, we're kind of like in our own kind of deal also. It's nice. It's a very attractive location wise, because you're amongst so much culture and you're amongst so much like different, and you're on the East Coast. I mean, it's always that East Coast type stuff, right?
Yeah, and Columbia being right in the middle, I mean, we're really close. So if you look at that where it says Georgia there, that's Macon just north of that. So you're just north of Atlanta, in that area there. But Athens, that's where the Georgia Bulldogs, that's where their university is in Athens, and really close to Augusta. And we're about an hour and a half from Charleston. So it is about an hour to Charlotte. So it is a really nice central location, and most of these interstates go right through Columbia. So it was just to put it in context.
And it's growing. I mean, obviously with all the numbers and stuff. So
here was I did a little quote to kind of tie things in tie it in a bow, put a bow on it here at the end. And I just finished watching the most recent episode of Ted Lasso.
I love Ted Lasso.
I was a little inspired.
It's probably one of the best shows past 10 years.
It's great, man. It's a feel-good show. There's not too many feel-good shows out there anymore, but just listen to your gut, and on the way down to your gut, check in with your heart. Between those two things, they'll let you know what's what. So I just thought it's kind of cool.
That's very. I love that quote. It's he's got that southern kind of like. I mean, he's got that southern drawl and like that charm, like throughout the whole show.
Just never. Everything just rolls right off his back. Nothing is. He's very even keeled. Maybe when he shouldn't be.
Right. Exactly.
A lot of us, we'd have blown a gasket long before Ted Lasso does. So
right. I want to share your listing real quick with our huge audience today. No, that is okay. So Brad works for KW. That's a pretty big. They have a pretty good presence here too in Seattle. But you just listed this pretty recently, and it is in contract, correct?
Yes. So it was 11 a.m. yesterday. So a little over 24 hours. I suspect to have an email from the buyer's agent, but that's what I'm talking about. Quality, just like some updated stuff. It's not.
Oh man,
perfect.
I love that.
It's really, really quaint and inviting, and it's very private. It's on a cul-de-sac. It's almost a half an acre lot, and the backyard is fenced. You can see that update. It's not over the top. It's very well done.
It's good.
And because it's on a bit of the incline on
man,
the
it's so
backyard,
cool.
detached garage,
Mhm.
so or workshop, but you can see that's the yard got a huge deck. Yeah, that was a good one, but nearly half an acre lot, and then behind there is um, I think probably another 100 yards behind there is uh, like a wetlands or a floodplain area, a protected area. So nobody's going to build back there. So you've got addition almost a half an acre, but that privacy that comes with no one else being able to build behind there. That's really
Mhm.
nice. So
That
yeah,
detached garage right there, that adds so much value to your home because it's such a at least here it's it's not a very common thing to have. So it's almost like a show off piece, really. Uh for dads or for dudes, that like have like I mean you're literally like detached, the detached part is like very
just
um
don't park a single car in it and just make it
yeah,
your man cave. You know,
exactly. My cousin, my godbrother, he lives in uh Vancouver, British Columbia, and they have kind of an odd setup there. So since the building is very regulated in Vancouver, they require you to have a separated rental unit in each house. Each new build has to have a required like rental unit. And so
hmm,
he actually has a new build. It was like 1 million, Canadian or whatever it was, which is like 750 here. But they said that the mortgage is paid for by the rents that they
wow.
collect from the two renters downstairs. That is required by the city or the country, or I don't know what it is, but um, their mortgage rates are really odd. It'll be, I don't want to get too into it at a time, but just kind of a little snippet. They don't have 30-year mortgages in Vancouver or in Canada. It's like 3 to 4 year mortgages. So
Wow.
imagine refinancing every 3 to 4
Holy
years,
cow.
regardless. I couldn't imagine. I don't know how exactly it works, but my cousin is a mortgage broker up there, and he's always busy because you have to. Yeah, it's like no choice. I don't even know how that works, but
That is really interesting.
yeah, it and if you ever go to Canada, like the way they build, it's really different. There's not real like the zoning's very different from here, and the streets are kind of I don't know. It's not bad. It's just very different. They still drive on the same kind of like way we do and all that, but everything's in French, so it's kind of like
Right.
it's kind of hard to like read stuff or whatever. But yeah, that was a great show. I had a lot of fun. I think the big thing that we want to hint at today was the debt ceiling and kind of the uncertainty with that and all that. And yeah, I had a good time. Brad, any closing remarks for the show today?
No, I appreciate everybody showing up and coming to hang out with us and asking questions. We appreciate it. Anybody on the rewind watching, leave us a comment if you have a topic or a question that you would like for us to answer in a future episode. We would love to hear from you. That's the premise of what we're doing is we want to interact with our with our chat and with the folks who view the show. So we welcome that.
Yeah, and if I've got some good feedback from people that I've watched on the rewind and they enjoyed the rewind. But if waiter James, if you know anyone that wants to come in or just watch our videos or just suggest to him, I think we both really appreciate it. I'll reach out to both you guys on either Discord or Instagram, and I'll send you guys something a little small just as a thank you for tuning in today. But that is our show for Wednesday, May 24th. Holy cow, it is almost the end of May. I'll see you a new man next Wednesday. I will be married on the civil courts. So
Congratulations.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's coming up really quick. We actually had some people in town already that we're going to be taking over over the weekend. So it's already started. It's only Wednesday, so I got a long weekend ahead of me, but I'm very excited. So
Very cool. That's awesome, man.
thanks, man. All right, well, you guys have a good week, and I'll see you tomorrow on OTR. Probably Friday and possibly Sunday. We'll see if I can I might do a show on Sunday, the day of my wedding, because the actual wedding doesn't start till 5 o'clock. But I might get my ass kicked. So we'll see. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. All right, take care, guys.
See ya.